If you've ever wondered how something as mysterious and devastating as autoimmune disease could start inside a body that once functioned perfectly, I want to take you to the very place where this silent breakdown often begins: your gut. Now, I'm not just talking about indigestion or bloating. I'm talking about the inner command center of your immune system. And here's the shocking part: the trigger is often something so basic, so overlooked, that most doctors don't even think to measure it. Magnesium. Magnesium is one of the most essential minerals in the human body. Yet over 70% of Americans are estimated to be deficient. It's involved in more than 300 enzymatic reactions, from regulating blood pressure to controlling nerve signals. But when it comes to autoimmune conditions, magnesium plays a much deeper, more intimate role. It's the stabilizer of your immune identity. Think of your immune system like a highly trained security force. Its job is to recognize invaders and eliminate them with precision. But when magnesium is missing, the guards start getting confused. They see shadows, not shapes. They react to movement, not meaning. They can no longer distinguish between an enemy and a neighbor. And eventually, they may start attacking your own tissues, your joints, your thyroid, your skin, your brain, anything. This confusion doesn't begin in the bloodstream. It begins in the eyes or gut wall. That's where 70–80% of your immune cells reside. That's the first line of defense. And magnesium is the mineral that keeps that wall strong. When your magnesium levels drop, the tight junctions between your gut cells loosen. This condition, known as ours leaky gut, allows undigested food particles, toxins, and bacteria to escape into the bloodstream. Your immune system detects these invaders and goes into overdrive, but in the chaos, it may begin to turn on you. Now let's pause here for a second, because this isn't just about biology, it's about lifestyle. Our stress levels are skyrocketing, processed foods are everywhere, and we drink coffee like it's water. Each of these things further depletes magnesium. It's a vicious cycle. The more stress you have, the more magnesium you burn. The less magnesium you have, the more stress overwhelms your system, biochemically and emotionally. In autoimmune conditions, what we often see is a Zavar's hyper-vigilant immune system with no internal compass. That disorientation begins in the absence of basic cellular resources. And magnesium is not just a cofactor, it's a philosophical element. It calms the nervous system, balances blood sugar, relaxes muscles, and teaches the immune system not to panic. It's the difference between a system that responds and one that overreacts. There's also a deep psychological component here. When people feel like their bodies are turning against them, it creates a rupture in trust. Autoimmunity isn't just a physical illness, it's a psychological betrayal. You feel unsafe in your own skin. But what if the betrayal began not as an act of aggression, but as a cry for nutrients? What if your body wasn't attacking you, but compensating for deficiencies it can no longer manage? Modern medicine often treats autoimmune diseases with immunosuppressive drugs. And while those are sometimes necessary, they rarely ask why the immune system went rogue in the first place. Magnesium deficiency is rarely tested. Even when it is, doctors often rely on blood serum levels, which don't reflect the body's true stores, because magnesium is stored in bones and tissues, not just blood. So even patients with normal levels can be profoundly deficient at the cellular level. Now, here's the actionable truth. Magnesium is abundant in leafy greens like spinach and Swiss chard, in nuts like almonds and cashews, in seeds, in whole grains. But our modern diets are so refined and processed that we've stripped most of these sources bare. Even the soil we grow our food in is depleted. So you have to be intentional. You have to eat for immune clarity, not just calorie control. And sometimes diet alone isn't enough. In cases of long-term stress, digestive issues, or chronic illness, 6 magnesium supplementation may be necessary to restore balance. But that should always be done thoughtfully in consultation with a knowledgeable provider, because not all forms are equally bioavailable and not all bodies respond the same way. At the core of all of this is a powerful idea. Your body remembers everything. It remembers stress, it remembers trauma, and it remembers nourishment or the lack of it. Magnesium deficiency is not just a minor oversight, it's a foundational crack in the architecture of your health. If we don't rebuild from the bottom up, the whole structure, immune system included, starts to collapse. So when we talk about autoimmune disease, let's stop just blaming genetics or bad luck. Let's start asking what the body has been deprived of, what it's been struggling to communicate all along. Because healing isn't just about suppressing symptoms. It's about listening to what the body has been whispering for years. Magnesium may not be flashy, but it may be the missing voice of wisdom in a body crying out for balance. If we restore that voice, perhaps we restore the peace. And where there is peace, autoimmunity cannot thrive. If you think autoimmune disease begins with a major trauma or some dramatic environmental event, let me challenge that idea. Because in many cases, it begins far more subtly, with a deficiency in us of vitamin D-F, the nutrient we often associate with bone health and sunshine, but rarely connect to the immune system's integrity. And yet, this overlooked deficiency may be quietly reshaping the way your body perceives itself, flipping the switch from tolerance to attack. Vitamin D isn't just a vitamin, it acts more like a hormone. It has receptors on nearly every cell in your body, including the cells of your immune system. And what it does quite brilliantly is teach the immune system how to distinguish between friend and foe. When your vitamin D levels are sufficient, your T cells, the special forces of immunity, remain calm, analytical, and wise. But when you're deficient, those T cells can become reactive, inflammatory, and irrational. In a sense, they start launching attacks without clear targets, or worse, they start aiming at the very tissues they were designed to protect. Now, pause for a moment and think about what that really means. An immune system with poor education becomes dangerous, not because it's evil, but because it lacks guidance. Vitamin D is that guidance. It's the moral compass of the immune army. Without it, you don't just risk poor immunity, you risk is autoimmunity. The problem is that vitamin D deficiency is astonishingly common, even in sunny climates. Why? Because we live indoors, we wear sunscreen, and our modern lifestyles disconnect us from nature. Our skin was designed to manufacture vitamin D when exposed to UVB rays from the sun, but that system breaks down if we're never outside or always covered. Add to that poor dietary intake and certain genetic factors that impair absorption, and you have a perfect storm. Let me give you a clinical picture. I've seen patients with lupus, multiple sclerosis, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, rheumatoid arthritis, all grappling with overwhelming fatigue, inflammation, and pain. And when we run a panel, we find critically low vitamin D levels. And here's the telling part. Many of them started to experience their first symptoms during the winter months or after long periods of stress and confinement, periods where sun exposure was minimal. Coincidence? I don't think so. You see, vitamin D does more than just modulate immunity. It protects against immune overreaction by promoting the development of regulatory T cells, those peacekeeper cells that keep inflammation in check and prevent friendly fire. These regulatory cells are like the wise elders in a community. They ensure that responses are appropriate, not excessive. Without enough vitamin D, those wise elders disappear. The immune system becomes like a town without leadership, chaotic, reactive, vulnerable to self-destruction. And it goes even deeper. Vitamin D influences the gut microbiome, which we now understand plays a central role in autoimmune disease. It enhances gut barrier integrity, reducing the risk of leaky gut, a condition where harmful particles escape into the bloodstream and confuse the immune system. This means vitamin D deficiency doesn't just destabilize immune function. It helps create the very triggers that set it off in the first place. This is where philosophy meets physiology. We think of healing as something external, a pill, a procedure, a protocol. But what if the body's ability to maintain self-recognition is rooted in how nourished its cells feel? What if autoimmune disease isn't simply a matter of bad luck, but defies our misinformed system making the best decision it can with limited resources? When you provide those missing elements like vitamin D, you begin to restore the body's inner logic. Now, I'm not saying that vitamin D is the single cure for autoimmune diseases, but I am saying it's as a core pillar that must be addressed, and it's measurable. It's actionable. Optimal levels are generally considered to be between 50 and 80 ng/ml for those with autoimmune risk, and many people walking around today are hovering somewhere in the 10s or 20s, completely unaware. So, what should you do? Get tested. Supplement wisely. Spend mindful time in the sun, about 15 to 20 minutes on bare skin without sunscreen during midday if your skin tone allows. Eat foods rich in vitamin D, fatty fish, egg yolks, fortified dairy, but know that for many, food alone won't be enough. Work with a provider who understands the immune system's nutritional needs and sees these whole persons, not just lab numbers. Because here's the truth that we need to sit with: the body doesn't turn against you out of malice. It turns in on itself out of confusion. And confusion in biology is often the result of missing information. Vitamin D is part of that information. Without it, the body cannot clearly see what belongs and what doesn't. It begins to attack the mirror, thinking it's the enemy. Let's stop punishing the body for being broken and start giving it what it has been silently begging for: clarity, nourishment, and guidance. When you illuminate the immune system with the light of vitamin D, you do more than prevent disease. You teach the body how to remember its true self. And that, I believe, is the first step toward real healing. When we talk about autoimmune disease, we often focus on the visible symptoms: the inflammation, the pain, the fatigue. But rarely do we ask the deeper question: what creates the conditions for this breakdown in immune identity in the first place? One answer, quietly buried beneath layers of conventional diagnostics, lies in an essential mineral we often overlook: magnesium. Not just because it's involved in over 300 biochemical reactions, but because it plays a foundational role in calming the immune system, regulating inflammation, and helping the body distinguish between safety and threat. Magnesium is the body's great relaxer. It eases tension in muscles, softens the rhythm of the heart, and quiets the stress response in the brain. But what most people don't realize is that it also plays a central role in how immune cells behave. It influences cytokine production, those small proteins that direct the immune response. It helps maintain a delicate balance between pro-inflammatory and anti-inflammatory signals. In essence, magnesium helps decide whether your immune system goes to war or holds the peace. Here's where the psychological and philosophical depth of this issue comes into focus. Think of inflammation as a message. It's your body's way of saying, something's not right here. But when magnesium is deficient, that message gets distorted. It becomes louder, more persistent, and less accurate. The body starts sounding the alarm unnecessarily, turning simple irritants into perceived threats, and eventually targeting its own tissues as if they were enemies. This is how chronic low magnesium levels can contribute to autoimmune conditions like rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, or even type 1 diabetes. Not by causing the disease directly, but by degrading the communication system that keeps immune responses intelligent and measured. Without enough magnesium, your immune system doesn't just lose clarity, it loses compassion. And when the body stops recognizing itself with compassion, it starts attacking out of confusion and fear. We see this clinically. Patients with autoimmune disease often present with symptoms that mirror those of magnesium deficiency: muscle cramps, anxiety, insomnia, migraines, palpitations. And yet, these symptoms are often dismissed or misdiagnosed. We throw medications at them: painkillers, antidepressants, steroids, when what they may really need is a deeper replenishment of the mineral that governs the body's capacity for calm and coherence. Magnesium deficiency is widespread, particularly in industrialized societies. The reasons are many: soil depletion, processed foods, chronic stress, medications like antacids and diuretics that deplete magnesium stores, and even caffeine. What this tells us is that modern life itself is a magnesium depleting machine. We live fast, we eat poorly, and we rarely slow down long enough to notice the warning signs until the body breaks. But here's the empowering truth: we can change this. Magnesium is abundant in nature and bioavailable through whole foods like leafy greens, nuts, seeds, avocados, and dark chocolate. Supplementation can be powerful too, especially in the form of magnesium glycinate or magnesium citrate, which are well tolerated and effective. And for those who struggle with digestive absorption, transdermal magnesium through Epsom salt baths or sprays can offer another route to healing. Even more profound, however, is the mindset shift that comes with understanding the why behind the deficiency. When we realize that magnesium is not just about muscle relaxation or better sleep, but about teaching the immune system how to act with discernment, we start seeing nutrition as wisdom, not just fuel. We stop asking, what pill will fix this? And start asking, what does my body need to feel safe again? Because ultimately, that's what autoimmune disease is about at its core: a loss of inner safety. The body no longer trusts itself. And to rebuild that trust, we have to nourish the foundations, both physically and emotionally. Magnesium gives the body permission to soften, to regulate, to listen again. And when the body listens, the immune system becomes less reactive, more balanced, more humane. I often tell my patients this healing isn't just about getting rid of symptoms. It's about creating an environment where your body no longer needs to shout. When you give it what it has been quietly asking for, nutrients like magnesium, you allow it to speak in a softer, more intuitive voice. You move from survival mode to a state of sustainable peace. Let's stop viewing magnesium as optional. It's not a bonus mineral. It's a baseline requirement for the kind of immune intelligence that protects without harming. If you're struggling with autoimmune symptoms, don't just ask what's attacking your body, ask what your body is missing. Because sometimes the most violent storms are born not of external threats, but of internal depletion. Magnesium is not a magic bullet, but it is a missing piece of a much larger puzzle. Restore that piece, and the body begins to remember who it is. Not a battleground, but a sanctuary. When the immune system learns to respond with clarity instead of confusion, with wisdom instead of fear, healing begins not just at the cellular level, but at the level of identity. And that is where real transformation happens. There's a deeper truth about healing autoimmune disease that we don't talk about enough. Not in exam rooms, not in labs, and certainly not on prescription labels. The truth is this: your body isn't broken, it's brilliant. It's doing exactly what it thinks it needs to do to protect you. The problem is, the signals it's receiving are confused, distorted by deficiencies so subtle they're often invisible to modern diagnostics. Among the most overlooked of these, omega-3 fatty acids. Now, I want you to imagine your immune system as a fire department. When there's a real emergency, a virus, a wound, an infection, it rushes in with full force to contain the damage and put out the flames. But what if that fire department lost its radio connection? What if it started responding to every spark as a 4-alarm blaze? That's what happens when the body is deprived of omega-3s. The immune system loses its communication center. It can't differentiate between friend and foe, between healing and harm. So it overreacts. It attacks healthy tissues. It triggers systemic inflammation. And we end up calling that an autoimmune disease. Omega-3s are not just heart-healthy fats. They're critical messengers in the inflammatory response. They tell the body when to start inflammation, and just as importantly, when to stop. They modulate the production of prostaglandins and leukotrienes, which are the biochemical flames and fire hoses of your immune response. Without enough omega-3s, the fire burns too hot and for too long. And when that happens in the joints, we get rheumatoid arthritis, in the thyroid Hashimoto's, in the gut Crohn's or ulcerative colitis. The location of the damage changes, but the root mechanism remains tragically consistent: inflammation without an off switch. What's sobering is that omega-3 deficiency is not rare. It's not exotic. It's not limited to remote or impoverished populations. It's here. It's now. It's affecting millions of people who eat standard Western diets that are overloaded with omega-6 fats from vegetable oils, processed snacks, and commercial meats. These omega-6 aren't inherently bad, but when they crowd out omega-3s, they tilt the entire immune system toward chaos. So what can we do about it? The answer isn't just to pop a supplement and hope for the best. The deeper work is about restoring Uzra's balances. We need to bring our dietary ratios back into alignment, closer to the 1:1 or 2:1 ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 that our ancestors evolved with, not the 15:1 or 20:1 ratios we see in most fast food and packaged meals. That means intentionally consuming foods rich in EPA and DHA, cold water fatty fish like salmon, sardines, and mackerel. It means adding flax seeds, chia seeds, and walnuts. It means considering a high-quality fish oil supplement if your diet consistently falls short. But this isn't just a dietary issue, it's a philosophical one. Because when we talk about omega-3s, we're really talking about the difference between inflammation and restoration, between reaction and resolution, between surviving and healing. And that shift is not just biochemical, it's deeply emotional. People with autoimmune disease are often stuck in a fight or flight state. Their nervous system is inflamed. Their thoughts are inflamed. Their very perception of self becomes inflamed. And so the journey to healing is as much about calming the inner dialogue as it is about calming the immune cells. Omega-3s help us access that calm, not metaphorically, but literally. They integrate into cell membranes, including those in the brain, improving fluidity and neurotransmitter function. They reduce anxiety. They lift depression. They help restore cognitive clarity. And when the mind begins to settle, the body follows. You see, healing autoimmune disease isn't about suppressing symptoms with more powerful drugs. It's about rewiring the terrain so the immune system no longer sees itself as the enemy. And omega-3s are part of that rewiring. They teach the body what peace feels like again. At the molecular level, we must begin to see food not just as fuel, but as instruction. Every bite we take tells the immune system something. It says, we're safe, or we're under attack. Omega-3s are the nutrients of safety. They tell your body that the war is over, that it can stop fighting, that it can rest and rebuild. So if you've been living in a state of chronic autoimmune distress, ask yourself, what signals am I sending to my body? Am I feeding it chaos or coherence? Inflammation or resolution? The answers might not lie in another specialist or another round of labs, but in a simple plate of grilled salmon, a tablespoon of flaxseed, a capsule of fish oil taken with intention and understanding. Let's not wait for the body to burn itself down before we listen. Let's nourish the system that's trying so hard to protect us with clarity, with compassion, and with the very nutrients that make healing possible. Because healing doesn't start with disease. It starts with the decision to listen to the body's whispers before they become screams. And often, that decision begins with the quiet power of omega-3s.